Good afternoon, ladies. I'm here with Tamara and Taiya, and we are going to be discussing the law of gestation, and it will probably lead into numerous other topics slightly, but hopefully we can correlate all of them together and have a great conversation. Tamara and I started discussing the law of gestation. I don't even know, it was the last time after our last video when we kind of chat after, and we end up just talking about all sorts of things. Yeah, the law of gestation came up and just how maybe we're not so patient with that. But Tamara has a really good definition that she can read for those of you who maybe don't know what that is.
And I am going to read it because I'm not that good. So it says there's a natural gestation period for all acts of creation. Just like seeds that take time to grow before they yield fruit, our dreams and goals must be nurtured and cared for over time until they're manifested into reality. Patience and perseverance allow for dreams to become a reality. And I think that is the perfect definition of what that actually means. And it's so true when Dev says, like, normally we want results like tomorrow. We want to plant the seed, we want to water it, we want it to grow before we finish watering it so that, you know, we can get the things that we want. And I think it's really important to just recognize, no matter what it is that we're referring to, whether it's personal growth, whether it's relationships, whether it's whatever it is, that law of gestation falls into play in every single situation, and planting those seeds and watering it and just watching it grow in the time that it needs to take.
Mm-hmm. What's your take, Taiya?
Yeah, it's so funny because I've been doing these empowerment calls, and we have so many of the women that I've been working with have these like big dreams and big goals, and they seem so far away. And what happens when dreams are so far away is that we give up on them. We get overwhelmed and we're like, that's way too far away. There's no way I'm going to get there. And then we forget about it. Right. But it's just a matter of kind of keeping that focus there, but getting little wins along the way to get you closer to that. I know Rachel Hollis always says, a goal is a dream with its work boots on. So it's like working towards that dream, but getting those little goals in place before you get there.
Yeah.
That's my take.
And love that so much, actually. And I just have like this mental picture in my head while you were talking about that. And I was just thinking it really is like growing a garden. Like, we can't just throw the seeds out there, toss a little water on it, and then expect it to grow, right? Mm-hmm. If we don't take care of it and we're not watering it and we're not looking after it every single day, the seeds are going to dry up and essentially that dream is going to die.
Yeah.
So in order for those things to happen, we have to make sure that we're mindful of the things that we're putting into that. So if we're using a garden as an example, because I love analogies, it's like making sure that you're fertilizing it and you're watering it and you're speaking love to it, talking to your little veggies, and making sure that you're showing up every single day, you're pouring into it the things that you want. You want your vegetables to grow healthy and happy, and you can't rush a carrot. I mean, I know it sounds really funny, but it's so true. And it's like the simplest way to put it if it feels complicating or whatever else.
I love the garden analogy, because actually, like, that's something that I've been talking to Leland about, because we're buying a piece of property, so we'll have it on May 19th, and there's like this beautiful large, I'm super excited. It's 1.5 acres, so I'm super excited. And there's like this place on the top that they've had a garden. And so in the past, Leland's always been keen on gardens. I'm a gardener, like, I enjoy flowers. That's my, like, I love flowers. Like, I love every kind of flower, doesn't matter. That's my jam. And but he likes vegetable gardens. Like, his grandparents have a huge garden, and he's always loved that. But in the past, which hasn't happened for a while now because we haven't really had any property to have a garden on, but he wanted a garden, so he like started rototilling up the soil. You know, like, there's so much process to garden. It's not just put the seed in. There's like, you have to get the manure and you have to get more soil and you have to mix it all up and rototill and do all this. So he does all that, right? And we plant the seeds and he is watering it, but like I come and the weeds are like 2 feet tall and I'm like, that's gonna choke out the garden. Like you can't have, so I always kind of bug him now because he's like, and then we can grow a garden. And I was like, who's gonna water it? And who's gonna weed it? And who's gonna rototill? Like who's gonna do all the things? I'm like, I love that you're passionate about building a garden, but and this is like what I take from it is that you need to know what's going to motivate you. You need to prioritize what's going to make you move, because you can say, I want to grow a garden, but if you don't have the motivation to build a greenhouse, start your sprouts, like if you wanted to start from scratch, rototill the garden, bring all the like it's a lot of work. So when we're talking about goals and big goals could be like a garden, and it's talking from like building that greenhouse, planting the seeds, getting them to grow before the snow is off the ground. And then you go into the summer and then you don't see that fruit or like the fruit of that until like September, and you've been doing this since February.
Yeah,
right?
and that's a garden. Think
It's
about
a
our
garden.
dreams and our goals and a lifetime of work that we pour into. And if we have these big dreams and these goals, we have to show up and we have to do the things that are going to enable that fruit to grow and be patient along the way. That is the biggest thing, because it is a normal tendency as humans for us to want things.
Well, I love that. And also like
go ahead, Taiya.
knowing your why and having leverage, because if you don't have leverage behind your goal or your dream, then really you're not going to get closer to getting there because you don't have that leverage behind you. You have to get kind of like a kickstart in a way and know your why and keep asking your why. In the KBB course that I've done, they have an exercise called seven levels deep. And I'm sure you guys have heard of it too. But basically you keep asking your why. So it's like, okay, I want to do this thing. Okay, why do you want to do this thing? Well, I want to do it because X, Y, Z. Well, why do you want to do it? Because X, Y, Z, right? Like you just keep going down these 7 layers to get to your why. So from your why, you can then build leverage to get closer to this dream.
Yes. Do you think that like I think there's a lot of, as we get to know ourselves and as we grow, your goals change, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, and you kind of figure yourself out a little bit more, and then you're like, like, okay, I'll just give you an example. Like a year ago, well, no, it was more than a year ago, but I quit my education assistant job because I really wanted to flip houses, because I wanted the freedom, I wanted the money, and like what it offered, and more than the money, because it takes time to build that kind of wealth when you're flipping. It's not just like that as anything, I feel like. But it offered me freedom and flexibility, which is mostly what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so I started out there and that really started helping me grow, because you have to rely on the law of faith. You have to rely on the law of intuition. You have to rely on the law of gestation, because it's not just I'm not gonna be a millionaire in a year at this point. I'm willing to like go the process, because here's the thing, and we always do this, we skip the steps because we want to get there faster, but there was like really important things to learn in those steps that you wanted to skip. And if you don't do those things and get through them, you're just going to repeat it. It's just going to keep coming back until you learn the lesson. So I'd rather, and Tamara and I were talking about this, flip the mirror on me. I want to know what I need to fix. Because when you can look at yourself and take it into perspective and be very aware and conscious of the things that maybe aren't serving you, maybe aren't helping you get into the place where you have these goals and these dreams, then your goals are going to constantly change. And I love the 7 layers deep. I don't know if I've actually heard that. I have a friend that's doing the KVB course too, but I'm not sure if he's mentioned that one to me, and I love that. But it really does strip away things. And when you kind of step into a light where maybe I was feeling like I needed creativity, and that's where flipping houses brought creativity to me, right? So as soon as I allowed that part of me to step forward and get creative, it opened up a door. And then like this door has just been like, I just feel like I'm marching through continuous doors, like just walking forward, and like finally I'm figuring myself out, and I'm 39 now. So it's been like a constant process, and you do change, but there will come a point where you get to that place that you said, like where you're 7 layers deep and you're like, okay, finally, I'm there. But it takes gestation. It takes time sometimes to just get there.
I think it's so perfect, Dev, just you like talking about doing your flipping and how it's not going to happen overnight. And that goes for all of us. So just sitting here with the 3 of us looking at our path of where we're headed. I'm almost 3 years into coaching. I am not a millionaire yet, but I know what it takes. And those doors have been opening for me, like Devon said. And I just keep walking through them, and I'm growing, and I'm figuring out more of my passion and more of my purpose and more of who I am. Devon doing her house flipping. It all takes time. You just have to keep moving forward and figure out those things. There's always going to be stuff coming up. We can go back to the garden analogy. No matter what kind of soil you have, you're always going to have weeds that are coming up. And if you don't figure out the things that are stopping that garden from growing and get rid of them, they're going to choke it out. And that is the way I look at that. That is like allowing fear to stop us dead in our tracks, instead of weeding through it and figuring out the things that we need to get rid of and the things that we need to remove from our lives so that we can keep moving forward and just trust that law of gestation, knowing that if we keep working at it and we keep showing up and we keep eliminating the things from our life that aren't serving us, that we're going to get closer and closer to that. And as long as we're showing up, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's so good. And I was thinking too, and I want to ask this to you, Devon, because Tamara, you touched on fear, and that's another thing that will hold us back from that also is fear. So like going back to when you quit your job to then flip houses, how did you manage that fear and get to that point of being able to realize this is my why and this is where I'm going and where I want to be?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting, because I've done a journal for like 2 years now, and my why originally was, well, I want happiness and I want freedom. I have those things.
Yeah.
And I realized that a year after writing that, like Tamara and I and Jill sat down and we did these journals together, and we did out our vision boards. So like, it's very specific. It's like, your belief system, and then it goes to your goals for life goals, and then 3-month goals, 1-year goals, your materialistic things that you want in your life or experiences, and in your fitness and your health. And my why was that. And then this year I rewrote it, and it was actually to help women. And I got a lot more specific about what I wanted in my life that way. So when I initially quit, I was scared. I was very scared.
I had the conversation with you shortly after you made that decision, and you were, terrified.
I was, but you know what is interesting? So one of my friends who now I feel like we both teach each other, but at the time she was like a mentor to me. We were sitting at Jimmy's because we were at a Rotaract meeting, and we were talking after, and I just said, I'm like, I don't know, like I want to quit, but maybe I should just stay and like work another year so I have more credit. And she's like, yeah, you could do that. Or she's like, maybe just something else will come. And at the time I was going through some struggles with a coworker, and I had told myself, if they elevate her into a position over me, I am done. And I kid you not, that was Thursday night. Friday, I went to work. It was the last day of school. It was like the last, at the end of June. That's exactly what they did. And I knew because I had told myself I was honoring myself. I was saving my mental health because there was a lot of stuff going on. It was peace of mind for me. And I knew it was like, and I think I've referred it to it this way, Tamara might remember, but I'm like, sometimes the universe or God or whatever you want to call it gets behind you and is like, well, you've been asking for this for a while and you're not really moving, so you kind of get your legs kicked out and you just belly flop into the pool. That's kind of what it felt like. And when that happened, I knew, and you know what, that's where you grow, right? When you have to get knocked, like when you're knocked into something, you have to swim. You just do, like you just do it. And then you start realizing how capable you are and how strong you are, and that there is all these, like the law of attraction and the law of gestation and the law of faith, and there's multiple, like I don't know how many, is there 7? I haven't read
I'm pretty sure.
them. I think there might be like 7. But you start realizing that there is more to life than going to work from 9 to 5. And that there's a reason that you have a passion on your heart. And now I realize that just going and doing the houses is just a tool.
Yeah.
It's not really my heart. It's not where my passion is, but is it going to get me to where I want to go? Yeah, it's going to be a stepping stone. So I guess fear, well, what were we talking about? Face everything and rise.
Yeah.
Right? Now fear doesn't, I'm sure there's like things that would make me fearful or make me feel afraid, like scared, right?
Yeah.
But
I feel like there's a difference between being scared and fear.
Well, there is, but I feel like we combine them sometimes. Like when I did my mentorship program that I just signed up for in November, I got invited to go into this boardroom, and I'm sitting there, and the gentleman that runs the mastermind, he comes in and he feels you out. Like he is checking you out to see if your vibe is going to be good for the group. And so he's preferential. Like he's not just going to let anybody in, because there's like a certain frequency and vibration that they want, right? Or energy, if you will. And so we got invited, and I was terrified because it was $33,000 Canadian. And I was just like, oh, I'm like, I don't know. I was so excited. I'm like, this is going to level me up, but so afraid. Because I was like, that's a lot. Like, but then I've been there, I'm like, but if you want to level up in life, you got to get proximity to people. Yeah. People that have what you want. They can teach you, right? So it was like one of those things where, like, if you can just get excited by fear,
yes,
then that helps things shift big time, right? So like even you ladies doing Beachbody coaching, stepping out of your comfort zone, doing, making, sending out messages, or even like doing videos, or writing up posts. Like I just think of Tamara when I first signed on with her like 2 or 3 years ago now, where she's at now, like, and everything has been a growth process, right? And you step through fear. You don't let it stop you.
No, absolutely. And I feel like I was just thinking when we were talking about fear and like just doing it. I was listening to Fear is My Homeboy on audio today, and she was talking about this plane ride that she had to go on and how she was having like the biggest anxiety attack of her life. And like she went in to talk about fear and how she was like, there are moments where you have to face that fear. She's like, in that moment, I couldn't turn around and get off that plane. Like I had a 4-hour plane ride ahead of me, and I had to figure out what I was going to do to show up for myself in that moment, because I had to face fear. There was no getting off the plane and deciding that I wasn't going to do it. And I feel like there's a lot of times where if we can put ourselves in that place of like, we need to go all in with fear so that we can get to that other side. We don't always have that option of just hopping off the plane because we don't want to be uncomfortable or feel that fear. And I feel like that's what happens so many times. We face fear, we get uncomfortable, things aren't happening quick enough, and it feels easier to put the brakes on and to just bail rather than toughing it out.
Or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So good. Another thing I was thinking about too, more recently I've been really diving into, it's called the Life Coach School podcast with Brooke Castillo. I don't know if you guys heard of it, but she talks a lot about this thought model and basically what it is. And I'm sure you guys have heard about it in different ways from different leaders. But basically it's that there's a circumstance that's neutral and is unchangeable. And then from the circumstance comes our thoughts about that circumstance. And what comes from thoughts are feelings, good or bad. And from feelings come actions, and then actions come results. So basically, if we can catch that fear or that thought, whatever it is at the beginning, if we can catch it from that circumstance, whatever's causing it, and try and flip it, or ask yourself really good questions like, why am I choosing to feel this way? And adding a choice to your thought, or saying, is this thought serving me? And being really mindful of that and watching your thoughts, it can just change everything. She talks about how we have 60,000 thoughts running through our mind every single day, and they're like unsupervised toddlers with knives, and a lot of them are negative. If you don't watch them, and if you're not mindful of them, or you don't do like a thought download in a journal or something, it can just like overwhelm us and we can be paralyzed by it. Right? So catching those thoughts to then create the best results and get closer to that dream, and that process, so important, so powerful.
I told you she was amazing.
Yes.
Oh, I'm freezing.
I love that, because we've talked a little bit about this in our book club, because we're reading the Breaking the Habit of Being You by Joe Dispenza, and he talks about how thought leads to feeling leads to more thought sometimes. So like,
yeah, and it's this circle.
Action, but he said like, and like I don't know if it was in this or if it was in book club, but I was talking about how like it would be very much like, someone cuts you off in traffic and you get angry, right? And then those angry emotions lead to, this happens to me all the time. Every time I go out, this happens to me. And you just keep, so like it's thought, and then back to feeling. And that's how like road rage would be, because you could have just let it go.
Yeah.
At the feeling. You could have felt it and you could have let it flow through you. So I love what you're saying about becoming aware, because being aware of your thoughts, there's so much stuff that goes through our head. I was watching this other guy talk about how he's like, not everything that you think is going to come to fruition. He's like, oh my gosh, could you imagine if that happened? He's like, you have, like you said, 60,000 thoughts going through your head, and lots of them are messed up. So what this guy said, and I can't remember his name right now, James Moed, that's his name. Okay, there it is, came to me. But he talks about how we just need to be quiet. So like, instead of vocalizing that, which turns it to act, like can turn it to action, you just let that thought be and let it go, instead of saying, this always happens to me. I'll never have enough. I'll never be happy if this doesn't happen. And he trains like NFL players and all this, like, and he was telling these like amazing stories in this interview about how like, it was back in the 1950s or 1960s, there was a baseball game happening, and one like the lead, I don't know the guy's name because I don't do sports really, but one of the lead pitchers, he was doing an interview, and he said, so like the worst thing that could happen is, he's like, the ball could get hit, it could go between my legs, and we would lose. The best thing would be as I catch the ball and it would be over. Someone hit the ball, it went between his legs, they lost. And what like they're starting to show, like with neuroscience and stuff, is that as soon as you verbalize something, it's like 70% chance of something happening that's like that or that happening.
Yeah.
70. That's huge.
That's crazy. You know what that just reminded me of? When we were at UFD and Marianne had everybody get their phones out and she was like, I want you all to type in, I don't want to see pictures of kittens. Everybody does it. Do you want to know what comes up when you type in, I don't want to see kittens in Google? A whole buttload of kittens.
Yep.
So like, it's just that proof right there, right? Where if we are kind of putting energy at all towards the negative worst case option, like that's always what's going to come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
my kids were blown away when I showed them. They were like, I think it took them, well, I know Maverick didn't get it. He was like, oh, kittens.
Yeah.
But like Raylan, she got it more, and it took Lane a little bit, but they were like, wow, like the power of thoughts, the power of the words that come out of our mouth.
Mm-hmm. And our brains are computers.
Yeah, they are.
It didn't
and
catch the I don't, right?
Yes. And that's where Brooke Castillo often talks about, like, our brains are like computers, and asks, what software are you running? Right? What software?
Yeah.
Do you have viruses coming in? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I did a post today about, like, I don't know if you guys ever used LimeWire, but like there'd be the craziest viruses that would come up on your computer when you try and download music years ago. But like in our brains, is that happening? Like, what viruses are you taking in? What are you consuming? Is it the news? Is it social media? And being really mindful of that, and then getting it down on paper, just writing. And last night I actually spent some time doing that. And I just got all my thoughts down. I organized them all, and I highlighted every single thought that was not serving me, and visualized an opposite way of how I could make that into a positive thought. And best case scenario of what could happen, right? Turning it into a positive feeling rather than like, in this like scary unknown world of, you know, this 60,000 thoughts going through your brain every day, right?
Yeah.
So just being like mindful of that and doing that thought download from that software that you're running. So good.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that.
I think it's
and then
amazing.
I was going to say too, Rachel Hollis talked about at the Rise conference on Sunday, how like our fears are like a plate of nachos. And I guess she references everything to food, which I can relate to because I love food.
Yeah.
But she references fears as a plate of nachos, and then everything that could happen is like the tortilla chip, and then what actually happens is the jalapeno seed. Like, it's just like we have all this giant plate of fears, right? There's a small amount that could happen, like there's a small chance. But then what actually happens is a small little itty bitty tiny thing, right? That we can deal with because we can do hard things.
Yeah.
I actually just had this
so good.
We
kind of pivoted into
I had this funny thought about how we're just like talking about, you know, if you're in traffic and you're like, oh, that happens to me all the time. So I kid you not, ever since I was a little girl, my mom every year would make turkey soup at Christmas, and my dad would always get the only bone. There was always one bone in the pot of soup. And my dad every year would be like, every single year this happens. I'm the only one that gets the bone in my soup. And the next Christmas would come around and my dad would get the bone in the soup, and he'd be like, every year I'm the only one who gets the chicken bone in my soup. And this was literally every Christmas my whole childhood. My dad is always the one that gets the chicken bone in his soup. None of us would ever get it. And it's just really funny how even in like the simple things like that.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, if that doesn't show you the power of words and how just in the little, it's very interesting how things happen. And if we could record the things that we've said leading up to the moments and then play them back for ourselves, we'd be like, okay, I asked for that.
Yeah.
You know, and like, but instead we can't believe, it's really hard for people to believe that we have that much control.
They chalk it up to coincidence or, right? Yeah.
that's just the luck of the draw or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's, you know, like it's one of those things like, oh my goodness, my son tonight told me, he's like, yeah, Mom, I lost a tooth and I flushed it down the toilet for good luck for a day. I'm like, oh, I said, or we could just create our own good luck and then we don't have to rely on flushing teeth down the toilet.
Right? Oh
So
my
I don't
God.
know where he heard that from.
Pulling out eyelashes to make wishes.
Yeah, exactly. None left.
Yeah.
It's a good look, really.
Right?
But yeah, so like I think I love this conversation that we've had, and
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of things that correlate into it, like the thoughts that we think and how we feel about things, and then what we say. And everything happens for a reason. Everything happens in its time and for a season, and that is the law of gestation. So
Yeah.
we should never be willing or wanting to rush through life, because the beauty of the journey is going to far outweigh the money or anything like that. Like the money will come, but it's not the most important thing.
Yeah.
Right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, I hope that was helpful for
Yeah.
some people and that everyone gets to listen and watch. And yeah, we'll
Love
be
it.
back next week.
Wonderful. We will, yeah, always let us know your thoughts. Share what you feel and what your experiences are.
Yay.